Where'd you get these two guys from?
Hello, it's Daniel here. You're very welcome along to episode 22 of the Tackling Sport podcast. And just myself today. John is travelling around the country and he'll be in and out this week. We should get him for the Premier League preview. We enjoyed putting together the 3 shows last week, and we'll continue to do that for the next couple of weeks and see how it goes. So we've got Premier League preview later in the week. We've also got a little bit of an introduction to the NFL to come. But yeah, very excited this week to interview James Power, who is Ireland's youngest professional boxer. He's actually only 19 years of age. We speak to him about making his pro debut at 17 in Mexico, what that was like, his ambitions going forward, what training's like, particularly during lockdown, incorporating running, and a good talk on mindset. For someone at 19, he really has a big understanding of his ambitions, his goals, and his habits, daily habits. So I got a lot of a chat. I hope you enjoyed it too. And yeah, James is definitely one for the future. So we'll have that interview now and we'll have a chat afterwards.
My mind's gone running.
I'm delighted to be joined today by Ireland's youngest professional boxer in history with a record so far of 5-0. It's Cork's very own James Power. James, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
James, first of all, so let me get this right. You're 19.
Yeah, 19 now.
Yeah, you've had some career so far.
It wasn't too bad.
Tell us a little bit about starting off boxing and what appealed to it starting off.
Well, I started boxing at the age of 9, and to be honest, it was just a feeling. From the moment I stepped foot inside the boxing gym, I just loved it. I felt at home, and it just took over my life. I became obsessed, and I just stayed focused, and have since. So for the past 10 years, it's just been boxing, and hopefully I can continue it for the future as well.
A lot of kids would have a lot of sports. Like when I was growing up, I actually was big into tennis for like 2-year period and went into golf, all sorts of things. Did you try other sports or was it always boxing?
I tried a bit of GAA. I was always active, but nothing appealed to me like boxing did. It was just a different feeling, and I knew that's what I wanted to do for my future, and it's what I enjoyed and it's what I loved. So I just stayed focused on that.
And was it the individual kind of aspect to it? Was it the training? Was it a bit of everything? Or
to be honest, I never thought about it too much. It was just, I suppose, everything came together. It was hard work. It was pushing your limits, testing yourself physically and mentally. The individual aspect was good because you didn't have to rely on other people. You know, if you didn't put in the work, it was going to show when you get into the ring. And you're not relying on others to kind of keep the team together, you know, where if someone else slacks off, it's not going to affect your performance. Once you, your coach, you know, your trainers put in the work, then it's going to show on fight night. And that appealed to me because I could take it as like a personal route, and I put in the work, and you know, I show up on fight night, and it's all down to me at the end of the day.
yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about did you always have ambitions of becoming pro, or when did that come on the table? You obviously would have started off with amateur fights.
Yeah, that's something that was kind of, I wasn't the same as the other kids, you know, where I didn't even like the amateur side of boxing, to be honest with you. It was more, when I was 9 and I started boxing, I just wanted to be pro, and my dreams never involved amateur boxing or anything like that. I was just waiting until I was 18 of legal age to turn over and become professional. So I suppose when the opportunity came to go a little younger, I grabbed it with both arms, and my family knew that it was going to happen eventually because I've been telling them since I was 9 or 10, and all my friends as well, you know, they've heard the story. Like, yeah, I'm going to turn pro when I'm 18, and they must have been laughing at me, but I've been saying it since I was 9 or 10, so it was a singular focus for me.
And were you telling people because you genuinely believed it, or were you almost telling people that, okay, I've told so many people now I have to do it? Or, you know, what was the mindset involved? Because if I'm just thinking, if I had a dream like that, I might kind of go about it a little bit more quietly and try and reach it.
Yeah.
You seem like if I tell everyone I have to make this happen.
It was more, I saw it as kind of, that's just a step in the plan. I'm just going to use amateur boxing as a stepping stone, get as much experience as I can, And then, at the first opportunity, I'm going to turn professional. There was no other possibility in my mind at that young age. And I just, as I said, I stay focused the whole time. So it wasn't a case of will this happen. It was a case of when it will happen. Obviously, it happened a little earlier than I initially thought, but that's all part of it. And I suppose it was a little earlier, but at the end of the day, it's still the goal I had in mind, and it was what I worked towards my whole life.
Tell us a little bit about the training regime involved, even as a kid growing up. So, obviously 9, you might not have been training every day, but when did it become, did you start off a couple of times a week, and when did it become, 4, 5, 6 times a week training?
So around the age of 9 or 10, you're going, I think it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so 3 days a week.
Wow.
I say I was running, on the other days and doing a little bit, but it's normally 3, and then you start fighting amateurs, or you start fighting in the amateurs at 11. So training would have stepped up a little bit, and I know myself because my uncle was the trainer. I was in the gym as often as he was, so if he had someone coming down on Tuesday, I'd jump in. Same with Thursday. So it started, kind of taking over more and more. So leading up to fight night or to fights and competitions, then at the age of 11, I could be in the gym 5 days a week, and it just went from there. So I had a big, I suppose, base, a big foundation from that early age. So I was just building on that, and I suppose as I transitioned and with school, I was training 2 times a day, maybe 6 days a week. Still am. So it's just about keep building it a little longer in the gym each time, and just trying to build that base.
And then tell us about turning pro.
So when I was going into my Leaving Cert year, I turned professional just beforehand.
No better time.
Yeah, and fought 4 times professionally during my Leaving Cert. So I turned pro at 17. The kind of, I suppose, thought came into my head not long before that. I was speaking to someone and they just asked just a general question, are you still planning on turning pro? And I just said, yeah, as soon as I turn 18, because that's the legal age, I'll become a professional boxer. They said, why don't you just turn now? So I started talking to them about the legal side of it and said you'd have to go to, a couple of countries in the world that allow you to fight underage, Mexico being one of them. And they just asked, why don't you do that? And then that kind of ignited something in my head, and I was like, yeah, why don't I do that? Has anyone ever done that? Has anyone even thought about doing that? And when I put the idea out there, my family were supportive, in fairness to them. My mother, she's by my side no matter what, and I'm very lucky to have her helping me and, guiding me through this and just being there to support me. So I brought it up to her, and she'll be behind me if it's really what I want to do. So she asked me a few questions, made sure that I was 100% behind this and my mind was in it. And the moment it stuck, I put it out there, and boxing managers, promoters jumped on to help me, and I got help off of Assassin Boxing, who were big in Ireland at the time. We went over to Mexico. We got a license, fought, flew home, and was in school the day after.
So for those that don't know, you actually not only completed your Leaving Cert but did really well. How did you balance that? I just have the dates written in your fight here. So you would have had 3 fights before your Leaving Cert, or 3 or 4?
I think it was 4 fights before my Leaving Cert. But yeah, in Mexico one, I went back to Mexico for a second time. Then I fought in Hungary and fought in Slovakia after that as well. One of them was on my midterm break. The last one was the night before my Irish Oral. So my real Irish Oral, I had to fly home that night. I landed in Cork at 3 a.m. I think, and I was doing my oral at, I think it was 9:20 that morning. So it was just little things like that, but it was taken as it came. I just took responsibility for it. I took ownership for it, and whatever happened, it was my choice, and I just had to deal with that. But the teachers I coached for college really helped me out. The other students, my classmates, my family, they were all like working together just to ensure that I done the best I can. But yeah, I got out of it with a solid Leaving Cert result, and I suppose I did leave a few points on the table, but considering the year, it wasn't too bad.
I just think it's very impressive because you from the age of 9 almost you really wanted to be a pro boxer, and you could have argued at the time that
Yeah.
leaving cert's almost in the way, but you saw the importance, and I'm sure your family were very keen for you to have that, and you have that now as a solid foundation if you ever need it.
Yeah, of course. School was never an issue for me. I balanced school and boxing, my whole life really. So I never saw school as an obstacle or an obstruction or anything. And like, there's a debate about, like self-education and schooling, but it wasn't the case. I think a lot of people drop out just because they don't want to do it. It's like, they use an excuse to say, oh, but this is in the way. And I just kind of wanted to show kids coming up that you can do both. I had a Leaving Cert year, and I think it could challenge anyone for like the busiest or the strangest or the most active or something. But we got it done, and we got a great Leaving Cert result out of it. So if you're just willing to put in the time, you're willing to work hard, and you're willing to do what it takes, it can be done. And I suppose I try my best to prove that.
And it's important to know, as we mentioned at the top of the show, that not only were you fighting in these countries, Mexico, Hungary, Slovakia, but you were also winning those fights. Were any part of you nervous going into those fights in terms of your age and the opponents would have had experience over you? How was the kind of lead up to those fights with everything that was going on?
I suppose first fight would have been the most important one, because that's a big game changer. The second, third, and fourth, they're just the same as the first one in kind of retrospect. It's a little different, but it's almost the same. There was a big change from my amateur fights to the pro debut. You're in Tijuana, you're in a nightclub. It's just a different atmosphere altogether. There's Mexican people banging on the ring. There's people screaming, shouting, and it's completely different. And I suppose my senses were overwhelmed, so I couldn't really worry about it too much. I couldn't focus on it. I just had to stay concentrated on what I had to do, and that was get in there and fight and I suppose perform.
Talk us a bit about that Tijuana fight then. Who did you have in your corner over there? Because it's obviously a very intimidating place to go. So, to tell us a little bit about that fight itself.
So in professional boxing, you have to have a professional coach in your corner. So at the time, I was training with Declan Garrity. He's a pro coach from Dublin. So I later trained with Pete Taylor, who's also based in Dublin, father of Kay Taylor.
Yeah.
So I was training myself Monday to Friday, just me alone in Talbot Fitness, which is a gym in Ballincollig. And then on Saturdays, I was traveling to Dublin to do some pad work and some coaching with the trainers. So again, that was a difficult part of the career, and I suppose something that's different and not many fighters deal with. Train yourself. It's not ideal for any young fighter wanting to improve. But again, we made no excuses and we took responsibility for it. I had Declan Garrity in my corner. We flew out from Dublin, arrived in LAX, stayed with a fighter that lives over there. He drove us down to Tijuana. Luckily, he speaks Spanish, so we had some communication over there. But we stayed there for a few days. So we stayed there, fought, won, came home. And in the space of 4 or 5 days, it was all over, like done and dusted. So it wasn't too bad. I wasn't scared about going across the border or anything. Tijuana is almost a holiday resort at this stage. It's like part of California, It's not the nitty gritty of Mexico, so I was safe enough.
So then, tell us a little bit then, before lockdown came, what you were doing. So you completed your Leaving Cert last summer, was it? Or so
Yeah.
You fought again, and then you moved over to LA. Tell us a little bit about that and what was involved there, just as prior to lockdown, obviously.
Yeah, so I done my Leaving Cert, and I got an opportunity to go to Los Angeles for a training camp. So I went over there, trained for a while, fought in Mexico, and then came back. But I signed a contract in the end of February to relocate to LA permanently. The move was planned for 5 years, and that was at the end of February. The plan was to come home and get my visa at the end of February, start of March. Unfortunately, like this COVID-19 situation kicked off, and it took everyone by storm, but that threw everything up in the air, and it kind of made my career uncertain because the move to LA is postponed, and I still don't know what's going to happen. And honestly, I don't think it's going to happen until 2021. I can't see visas getting handed out too lightly. So that threw 2020 completely up in the air for me. A year that I should have been getting ready to, make my mark on the boxing scene, fight maybe 4 or 5 more times, end the year at 10-0, 11-0, and be progressing as a fighter. And I've been inactive the whole of 2020 because of this situation.
So tell us a little bit about what the training's been since lockdown. So obviously there was a lot of restrictions involved. How you managed to keep yourself fit during that period, and now as the restrictions are easing a little bit, you're back in the gym boxing, or?
Yeah, so when lockdown started, there was 2 or 3 weeks beforehand where everything was kind of uneasy, before there was actual like legal lockdown. But we kind of cocooned then because my mother, she kind of goes up to my great grandparents and things like that, and we just wanted to be safe and cautious. So we held back those 2 weeks, and then lockdown came. So gyms were closed, everything was closed. I had no access to boxing equipment or a bag. I had skipping rope and, a pair of running shoes. So I just focused on what I could do and not what I couldn't. And I suppose there's always something that can be done. And once you don't become complacent, you should be okay. So I just took up running, and I've always liked running. I've always enjoyed getting away for a few hours. So I started focusing more on that, and I just kept the mind in a good place, because with everything going on, it would have been very easy to fall into a negative mindset. And I did dibble dabble in between, like being positive and uplifting, and then negative and kind of, I suppose, frustrated with everything that's going on. But that's just natural with, I suppose, the world we're living in today. Luckily, restrictions are lifting, so the gyms are back open now. I'm back training boxing. I'm back, strength training, and I suppose just rebuilding anything that I lost and trying to improve and just be ready if the call comes or whatever happens.
Yeah, because similar to you, I took up running, but I took up running up to 5 kilometers and built myself up. You're probably doing yourself a disservice, because when you say you took up running, you started off with, correct me if I'm wrong again, but 50k runs, 80k runs. Before you tell us a little bit about that, were you always running alongside the boxing? Do the two of them go hand in hand together, like particularly the long distance? Or how did you get the motivation to start doing the 50k and then the 80k run?
Yeah, you're right with the 50 and the 80k, but I always had running as part of my training program. Now, I never ran long. I say max I ran 10k. That was the first I ran. It would have been usually 5Ks as fast as I could, and then 10Ks if I'm just trying to clear the head and get out for a while. The 50k came about because I always ask the question, could you run a marathon without training? And the one thing that kind of annoys me with like the 44 kilometers or something is it's not set, it doesn't round up nicely. So I was thinking 45, and I just said, why not just go 50? So we done that. That was okay. And then obviously when you get to 50k, it's a case of when that's accomplished, your goals change and the goalposts kind of move. And I just had to raise the bar, and I said, why don't we try 80? So we tried that. It was a little tougher, but we got through it. Yeah, and that's what they came about. It was more just having something to focus on, saying in maybe like next week I'm going to run 80k, and then going out and doing it, because as I said, your head falls into a weird place when you have no idea what's going on. And
Yeah.
a lot of people kind of, I suppose, dealt with that, but that was my coping mechanism anyway, running and just having something give me purpose when you woke up in the morning.
So would you decide, it sounded like you just decided to do the 80k a week before. Like, how do you train much? Is it more training? Like, we had Connor O'Keefe on, as you know, a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying a lot of his endurance, ultra running was purely training the mind for it. How did you go about? Because, it's a lot. I know you're a professional boxer and you're very fit, but, you're still running a marathon or just over a marathon, and then running 80k is another 30k on top of that.
I tell you, it's kind of a funny story with the 80k anyway, because I didn't train for that either. And I wouldn't recommend that to anyone because, you know, there's kind of a point where if you just overdo it and you just push past that limit, your body's not gonna thank you for it, and you're gonna get sick and you're gonna be overtrained, and things like that. So I don't recommend that to anyone. But the thought into my head, what about if we try 80k? And then the moment that came, I couldn't sleep that night thinking about it. And then the next night I couldn't sleep the next night thinking about it. And then the next day I just said to my mother, I'll have to do it in the morning because I can't actually sleep thinking about this run. So I think it was 3 days later from when the moment came into my head, I just went, here, we'll have to just get it done. And, if I do it, then fair enough, I done it and I might be able to get a good night's rest. So I just went for it. But my mental strength and I suppose my mental fortitude's fairly good, and I spend a lot of time like preparing my mind. I think boxing helps with that too because you're used to getting in those trenches. You're used to dealing with pain, and your pain tolerance is a lot higher than just the normal person that's just exercising just to stay fit. So it all kind of came together, and I suppose I tested my mental limits and see how far I could go. But I definitely have further in the tank.
Yeah, I was gonna say so. Two. That's basically 80 k's. Just shy of two marathons. So you did it in 8 hours 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Did you have a target going out, or how did you approach time wise, or were you just trying to see it as fast as you can?
Well, I ran 10 kilometer. It's a 10 kilometer loop, so I ran that 8 times, and it's around the village where I live, Tripsy. So it's fairly hilly, and it's not flat land. There's a lot of elevation, a lot of gain. But I'm comfortable with the run. I do it, routinely.
Mm.
So I just said, I can run like 5Ks in like 17 minutes. So if I just knock it back like a fair length of time, I'll be in my comfort zone. I'll be just cruising. And it's a case of you'll run all day at that pace, that kind of cliched thing. So I said every maybe hour on the hour I'll start a new loop. So if I get back in 15 minutes, I have 10 minutes to eat and I suppose relax a little bit and then start again. But time wasn't my focus on the 80k. It was more of just get it done. I could probably do it a little quicker, but I wasn't too worried about it.
Which is very impressive. And tell us about if you're ever struggling in those moments. What do you kind of reference to yourself again? Speaking about Connor about this, like if you've just finished your fifth, or you're just starting out in your fifth, and you're like, geez, even when I get this done, I
Yeah.
have another three loops. How do you kind of go keeping going? Because a lot of people, myself included, will be running, a lot less than that in 5Ks, and struggling halfway through that. Like, how do you? What do you say to people like us that just need that little bit more driven or maybe focus during a run? How do you train yourself to be good in that mental state that when it does get tough, that you're able to push through?
I think there's two different types of ways you can think about that. There's the one where you're doing the 5K, but you're going as fast as possible. So when you hit that, like, I suppose, limit or perceived limit, it's uncomfortable. Your body's telling you, stop this, it's uncomfortable. It's like a safety mechanism, and it's hardwired into all of us. We all have that little switch that says, here, stop doing this. It's not comfortable. It's about recognizing that and just knowing that you do have more and you are capable of more, and kind of ignoring that, I suppose, central governor theory. That's what it is. Just ignoring that kind of instinct or feeling or signal, and just pushing through just one more. And I always kind of come back to that, just go one more second. And then when you go to that, just say, oh, just do one more. And then you come to that, just do one more. And then keep just saying, just do one more. And eventually you're going to get to the end. With regards to the 80 kilometer, I wasn't in that like pain, I wasn't, in that kind of limits. It was more of just, are you willing to run for 8 hours rather than are you willing to be out of breath or anything? Because you're in your comfort zone. You're just cruising. So it's a case of, are you just going to stick with it and then it's a different ball game altogether. You just have to say, okay, one more step, 1 more kilometer, 10 more kilometers, one more hour, and eventually it will come to an end.
So tell us then a little bit about the boxing training you're doing now. So, stating the obvious here, but, there's no kind of date where you'll be able to fight. So, there's not a case that you have a goal that in 6 months I need to peak.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of people struggle when they don't have that goal. Like, for example, if someone does a marathon, they kind of tend to fall off because, the marathon was the big goal. Or how do you kind of keeping the habit of training every day? Like, are you training 5-6 times a week? And how do you keep that going when there is nothing, there's just, you just gotta be ready. You need to be ready. How do you keep that going?
yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. And a lot of fighters, they only train for the 8 weeks leading up to fights and things like that. Exercise is a big part of my life, and it's something I will do, no matter what. If I have a fight coming up, if I don't, exercise is going to be part of my daily routine. So I suppose I'm lucky and in that regards that I just see exercise as something that's crucial. It's necessary. I'm not training for like the fights per se. I'm just training for life, and it's not. And then you see a lot of people, as you said, the marathon where they get that, or photo shoot, or things like that. And I've been guilty of this in the past where I've set like limits, I've set goals and finish lines for myself. Where when you reach them, and then you fall off the wagon, and it goes pear shaped. So it's about when you get there, setting a new one straight away, and just always moving the benchmark. Just I suppose setting the goal a little further.
Yeah, because similar to yourself, like not an elite level, but I used to struggle a lot when my gas season was over. Like there was nothing to train for. What was the point? I'd even struggle for pre-season, and during lockdown, the first few weeks, I definitely struggled in terms of there was nothing to train for. I suppose it's just picking
Yeah,
up those good habits and trying to make them part of your daily life, and before you know it, you're doing it automatically.
yeah, but I think we all deal with that. Not being able to have something to train for, not having a date in mind, and I get fed up with boxing every now and again. I get frustrated because of everything that's going on. In lockdown, I done very little boxing because I just had to take my mind off it. I couldn't watch, a boxing fight. I couldn't even think about it because then I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to, fall into a bad headspace because, you don't know what's happening. So I focused on running. And I think if you just find something to focus on that gives you purpose to get out of bed in the morning, then, happiness is going to come with that, and you're going to have a reason to do it.
Tell us a little bit about your training regime at the moment. How often do you train, and what's the breakdown for a week? Because from the outside looking in on boxing, is it constantly just sparring or you on the pads, or how does it work for someone that hasn't boxed before but enjoys watching boxing? What's a typical week for you training at the moment?
So right now, I'm not doing much sparring or pad work or anything like that. It's 2 training sessions a day, usually 6 days a week. So that's 12 sessions a week. In fight camp, that could go up to maybe 14 sessions a week, where you could do 3 in a day. But you can only do a certain amount, and no one's in the gym 24 hours a day. But a lot of bag work at the moment, a lot of strength work, a lot of aerobic work, so the long runs, long cycles, long swims, just building that tank so that I can, I suppose fall back on it when I get into camp. And you know, in camp then, for me especially, because I am constantly training and I don't have to, lose a load of weight or get fit real quick. I can just touch up on things and I suppose speed work and uh, getting like sharper and sparring and work on those kind of things. Whereas some athletes then have to almost have their training camp as a fat camp. They're losing a lot of weight. They have to lose 20 to 30 pounds, and that kind of defeats the point of trying to get better, that kind of way. So I'm just tipping over now, getting strong, trying to prevent injuries, prehab, a lot of strength work, a lot of aerobic work, bag work, and just waiting for the call. And then I'll get a couple of weeks to touch up on things, and I'm ready to go.
Brilliant. You've been amazing with your time. Before we move on to a quick fire round, I just want to talk a little bit. Something I noticed following you there on social media was you speak a lot about improving your mind. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you kind of do to keep yourself focused, I guess, or kind of get that balance between, because you're obviously training hard but getting your downtime as well.
Yeah, I think mindset is the core of everything. If you look at all high achieving people, or high performing athletes, the common denominator across the board is a good mindset. And mental strength is everything. You could have the best talent, the best abilities, footwork, speed, strength, everything. But if you don't believe that you can win, if you don't believe in yourself, well, all of that means nothing, because the moment things get hard, you're gonna just quit and look for a way out. So I suppose, I think Connor said this in the interview the other day, that it's about building a mind that will run the 100 miler for him, and it wasn't about building a body as such. And I think I've taken that aspect to boxing. It's like building a mind that will get through the rounds, building a mind that can do those runs, building a mind to get through the training sessions. But you're also building a mind for life then, and no matter what like comes at you, or what curveball comes your way, you'll be prepared to deal with it. And I think that's so important, and it's something sport helps a lot of these people out with, that it just gives them that resilience and that mental fortitude. And that's why I'm a big believer why people should do sport, because it just provides you with that, so that if something happens in life, you're more prepared, because you've gone through the stress of training, the stress of competitions, and you can deal with the stress of life.
Yeah, because he spoke a lot about like train your mind, as in similar to squats. You build up from a low base. And do you ever have days in the morning where you're not, because you're training a lot? Would every out of the 12 sessions a week, is there one a week where you're not arse and you have to kind of drag yourself to it, or how do you kind of cope if there is a training session that you're kind of like, oh, maybe not today? How do you kind of push through to make sure you actually do that and put the reps in?
I think it's all about just showing up. You kind of have to listen to your body too. If your body, there's different feelings. I just know that I'm going to go in there no matter what. At that time, I'm going to be in the gym, and whether I'm feeling unreal or I'm feeling like I just don't want to be there, I'm going to go in. And once I get a sweat going, I feel a lot better. Once I'm in there for 10, 15 minutes, and the blood's pumping and the heart rate's up, well, then the training session seems a lot easier to me. But if not, I'm just going through the motions. I'm just going to get it done. And we all have those days where we just don't want to get up, and I think you just have to just get up straight away. Within that first 5 seconds, just get going, because you talk yourself out of it. Whereas if you just get in motion, your kind of mind starts working to reinforce you and kind of encourage you to keep going. So that works for me anyway, and I think it works for a lot of people.
No, brilliant. That's a really good answer there. Thanks a mil for coming on. As I said, just before we let you go, we're just going to do a quick fire round. So yeah, short as or long as that. Now, if you've listened to any of them, sometimes these answers are longer than some of the answers, but that's all good stuff. Don't worry. So there may be a tough question to start, but maybe proudest achievement to date.
Oh, I'm not sure. I think coming home after the debut and being with my family and just saying like, yeah, we've done something that was never done before, and we can, like, I suppose, celebrate together. And we went out for a meal. My mother and my sister, they've been with me the whole way, and it was just sitting down going, well, this is the start of it, and we're professional now. So hopefully, maybe like 10 years down the line, we can look back on this day and say this is where it started, and this is what made us successful.
The toughest fight you've had so far?
Oh, probably one of my Irish finals, or cadet final. I think I actually lost the fight, but it was definitely my most enjoyable. And yeah, it was definitely my toughest. We had the National Stadium, which is up in Dublin, um, on their feet after that. We got a standing ovation, and that's my toughest fight today. But it's also my favorite fight today.
What's goals that you have?
I suppose try and get a fight as early as possible. I want a shot at the WBC youth belt. It's a world title for people under 23 years of age, and I've had my eye on that for the past 2 years. And first opportunity I get, I'd like a crack at that. Just progressing now up through the ranks. I have a few goals that I'd like to accomplish, but it's just about, I suppose, progressing through my earlier goals to get to those.
Give us a book that you've been reading that would be good for people listening to read after this podcast.
Oh, books. All I've done during lockdown is read books. A book I think everyone should read is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
I actually started his Joe Rogan interview. I hadn't listened to it yet, or one of his Joe Rogan interviews. Yeah.
Yeah, that book's a game changer. But I've read loads, Mark Manson's books, they're brilliant. A lot of self-help books, Atomic Habits, Ego is the Enemy. Ross Edgley brought out a new book recently that I thought was very good, The Art of Resilience, and it's a mix of sport, philosophy, and science. So it's up my alley.
Podcasts, apart from tackling sport, obviously.
Can't go wrong with the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
The best podcast to date. There's a lot of them. Shane Finn has a good podcast. I think it's Pushing Limits, but I normally listen to Joe Rogan.
Sporting hero growing up?
Not actually sure. Marvin Hagler, I'd have to say. Boxer, of course.
If you could have 4 people we normally kind of say dinner, but say like 4 people from the world of anything, sport, politics, celebrities, to maybe 4 around the ring that you could have. Who are the 4 people that you never met before that you'd love to kind of sit down and have a chat with, or pre-fight maybe?
Joe Rogan, David Goggins, Jocko Willink, and Michael Jordan.
Jeez, that's some 4. Jesus, that's a great answer.
That's a solid dinner party.
Yeah, and it was really quick as well. Best advice you've ever received?
Live life with no regrets.
Brilliant. And then last thing, for someone starting out in any kind of sport, or they want to, they picked up running during lockdown. Running's kind of an easy thing because it's the most common, and maybe they've kind of given it up over the last few weeks. What would you say to them in terms of getting going again and, trying to keep fit and push themselves to that limit a little bit more?
Just work hard and stay consistent. Hard work pays off, and it might happen now, it might happen in a week or in a month, but eventually it'll pay off.
And James, last thing then, how can people follow your journey in terms of checking out and keeping tabs with your pro career?
You can follow me on Instagram @_James Power, and I just put up all my stuff there, so that's the best place to get me.
James, fantastic. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
My mind's gone running.
Absolute pleasure speaking with James. It's amazing he's actually only 19. So, yeah, for a man so young, he's really driven, and we're pretty excited here to follow his career over the next few years. And obviously, lockdown has slowed down his progress, but there's definitely, the future is bright once he's able to fight again. So James Power, we've linked his Instagram in the description. Do check it out. Do follow him. Do follow his journey. He puts up a lot of good stuff on Instagram as well. So we thank James for coming on. So as mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to have a podcast Wednesday and Thursday this week. So we're aiming for the next couple of weeks to have one out Monday, Wednesdays and Thursdays in your podcast feeds. Give you a bit of a mix of sports as well. So for those that are just into football, we'll try and have a football one a week, and all other sports we'll try and get covered as much as we can. If you do want to follow us or any ideas to the show, that's how you can get us at Tackling Sport. Check out our website, tacklingsport.com. All episodes are put up there directly too. If you are listening on Apple, we'd really appreciate a 5-star review. And all other platforms, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And all that's left to say is it's goodbye from myself, and I'll chat to you later in the week. Take care.
The world's made up for you, so take advantage and be happy.